This is the news and talk of Texas. Now, it's the Rick Roberts Show on 820 AM, 99.5 FM, HD2, News Talk 820, WBAP.
Well, I know there's got to be a few 100 million more like me, just trying to keep it free. Yeah.
Rick Roberts starts right now.
And good afternoon, 2:05 the time. Glad you're along. As much as I thought it was humanly impossible to have someone within Dallas political leadership as bad as the mayor himself, I have discovered otherwise. I have discovered that, yes, there is, in fact, someone within Dallas political leadership that is more lame than the mayor.
The NRA needs to step up to the plate, and they need to show leadership. Elected officials receiving dollars and support from the NRA and afraid to set policy and to set the necessary gun rules and responsibilities to save one, maybe. We should not allow people to possess assault rifles and weapons.
All right. That is Dallas Mayor Pro Tem Dwayne Caraway putting pressure on the national. First of all, someone please explain to me what the NRA has to do with any of this. The Second Amendment has not changed since the founding of this country. What has changed are the people of this country. Guns have been around since the Second Amendment was put in place. Shooting up schools is a relatively new thing. But what do you expect? Society has imploded. This has nothing to do with legislation, and it sure doesn't have anything to do with the NRA. Dallas Mayor Pro Tem Dwayne Caraway putting pressure on the NRA by calling on the organization to stay away from Dallas. Is he speaking for you? Who's he speaking for? The NRA is scheduled to host their annual meeting at, as you heard in WBAP News just a moment ago, the Kay Bailey Hutchinson Convention Center in Dallas. I think it's coming up April, May, something like that. It's their annual meeting. It includes national elected officials participating in leadership meetings along with exhibits. Yes, and they do sell guns. And unless you're a convicted felon or you're a nut job, then you can pass a background check, you probably can buy one. Caraway says this event is not appropriate. Now, stay with me on this. All right? Caraway says this event is not appropriate following the Florida school shooting and events that have happened in Dallas, like JFK's assassination and other things. Okay, what do any of... Forgive me, help me connect the dots. Generally, I'm pretty good at connecting them, but there's so many dots, often so many different directions, I'm sorry. I can't connect them. If anyone thinks gun control or getting rid of a specific type of weapon is going to change human behavior, you're laboring under a sad misconception, and I have no clue what this guy is thinking, other than posturing, perhaps, to gain favor with those that are less informed. He says the May event is not appropriate following the school shootings. Okay. He said it's time to put the heat on the NRA. Did the NRA go down to Florida and kill a bunch of kids? Did the NRA induce someone to go down and kill all those kids? Did the NRA give away free patches to anyone that was threatening the kids? No, this is just another goofball agenda. Look, I'm doing something. I'm going to make the NRA stay away from Dallas. Well, what the hell did they have to do with it in the first place? Folks, guns are not the problem. The Second Amendment, the way I read it, the Second Amendment has not changed since the founding of the country. It says exactly the same thing now as it said when it was put in place. The only thing that has changed is that we have devalued human life. That's what's happened. We have devalued human life to the point where people no longer value other people. Human life is no longer valued. And I'm going to say this, and I'll probably get heat for it. I don't often go here unless I'm asked. But if you're using abortion as a form of birth control, you're part of the problem. I'm sorry. When you devalue human life, these are the peripheral things that you get as a consequence for that action. So, Mr. Caraway, with all due respect, I have no clue what you're talking about or what goal you have. He says it's time to put the heat on the NRA, demand that they work with elected officials in our country. They do, sir. We want them to establish gun laws that protect. Well, the NRA doesn't legislate. Congress does that. We want them to establish gun laws that protect our children. Stop. What law? What gun law, if it had been on the books 2 weeks ago, would have protected kids in that school? None. You're dealing with a human problem, not a hardware problem. We want to keep our communities safe. Well, then I suggest you get a concealed carry until we can turn this entire imploding society around. We have got to take on the NRA. Okay, what is that? It's an easy target for a liberal to point at. You know, NRA, they're all about guns. That's the problem, right? Woo-hoo, I'm taking them on. Sir, with all due respect, and I've never talked to you, you're politically posturing because none of your statements make any sense. We have got to take on the NRA. I am all for the protection of the Second Amendment, but I am also for protecting the children and a safer Dallas. Okay, well, that's nice wordsmithing, but it doesn't make sense. NRA exhibits that will be held during the group's Dallas meeting will include the legal selling of guns. So, the problem is, ? We must get rid of these assault weapons. Okay, with all due respect, once again, and I don't know how many times I'm going to say that, what's an assault weapon? What's an assault weapon? To protect children. And we must do something now. You know, a guy can walk in with a couple of handguns and a few rounds. You know how quickly you can change magazines? It takes a button pushed, another magazine slid in. What, a second? You know, this whole debate over assault weapons is nothing more than a political ploy. Well, Caraway held this press conference on Monday. Is he speaking for you? This is the mayor pro tem. You know what that means. Some cities that don't have vice mayors have mayor pro tems. It comes from the Latin word as temporary. All right. 1-800-288-WBAP, 1-800-288-9227. 13 minutes after the hour, your call straight ahead.
It's because it's their convention. It's because it's their responsibility. It's because they stand for the very things that we are confronted with every day of our lives. Those kids in Florida, they will have to live with these nightmares the rest of their life.
Okay. Once again, I didn't think it was possible to have a city official that was as lame as the mayor is. I was wrong. That's one good thing about me. When I'm wrong, I will admit it. This guy, the mayor pro tem, the NRA stands for all those things. What they stand for, school shootings? Well, what's wrong with you? And what are you saying? Dallas Mayor Pro Tem Dwayne Caraway, you know, he made a big splash, held a press conference. He looked good. I liked his tie. But I'm sorry, nothing he said made sense. And it doesn't make sense because he's barking up that same liberal tree where you're not going to find any solutions. Second Amendment hasn't changed since the founding of the country. Only thing that's changed is us. Now, there is a stopgap. You can put armed security at every school, which you should. And at the same time, we need to start shifting as a society, putting value back with human beings. Mike in Weatherford. Mike, thank you for waiting. I appreciate it. How you doing?
How you doing, Rick? Pretty good. Like the show. Been listening to it for a while. I was just curious. It seems like every time they try to take something away from us Americans, it's either the wall or guns. And I just wonder if they have walls and they have guns themselves. That's what just everything they take, they have, you know.
Well, this mayor pro tem says in the same breath, I'm for the Second Amendment, but by the same token, I'm for protecting the children and a safer Dallas. Okay, well, you can be for the First Amendment, and you can be for protecting the children and a safer city, but I don't understand what the NRA has got to do with any of this.
No, it's just like, why don't they just go ahead and take the guns from our military while they're at it?
Well, I mean, it's the NRA. Do you even know anything about not you specifically, Mike, but people in general? Do you even know what the NRA has been called America's oldest civil rights organization? It was started in the late 1800s by a couple of U.S. Army vets, and it was started to promote and encourage rifle shooting on a scientific basis. In other words, teaching people how to do it properly. And in the following decades, they provided world-class firearms instruction to thousands of gun owners. That's what it began. It wasn't about fighting anti-gun nuts like it is now, but that's what they do. When anti-gun lobbyists and politicians, there is a war on the Second Amendment. Make no mistake about it. Every liberal wants you, to give up your gun. So they started getting involved with that. But I don't understand how the NRA has got to do. I don't get this. I would assume the mayor pro tem has reasonable intelligence. I realize he's probably politically posturing. It's never let a good crisis go to waste. It's the Democrats' slogan. But what he's saying I would think he'd at least think out his little speech to where it made sense. I could disagree with it, but at least it would make sense. Nothing he said makes any sense. Thank you, Mike. I appreciate the call. Let's go to Matthew in Keller. Matthew, thanks for waiting. How you doing?
I'm good. You're right about the NRA. They were the first civil rights organization. They went into the South where the Democrats, not the Dixiecrats, Democrats, were using the law to take away the rights of African Americans to own guns. They went down there and defended it and taught them how to use a gun so they could protect themselves from the Klan that the Democrats were using to intimidate them.
Well, yeah, most people don't realize the Democrats created an umbrella organization, a spinoff, if you will, of the Democratic Party, and they started the Klan to harass freed black men and what they called at the time radical Republicans. And it was radical for anyone politically to say, yeah, a black guy should be able to vote. He should be able to have citizenship across state lines. So that's why it was created.
Here's the other thing. You're always talking about getting our kids out of the public education system. I've called my church, and I found out, not through my church, but through me, because I used to live in Pennsylvania.
Right.
And I put my son in a cyber school, which is an online school.
Right.
They're free. However, Liberty University has an online K through 12th grade school. I'm actually talking to my church, Gateway Church, up in North Fort Worth campus, and then there's one in South Lake. I'm asking them to try to start a school there that basically uses Liberty as a base, and then all they do is have teachers there to help the kids.
Yeah, as a boilerplate for curricula. Yeah, that makes sense.
I mean, and the funny thing is that for all the students that go online, some of the money that you spend paying for the online school goes to a college education for them.
Yeah. I've heard of this. It's a good idea. I like it.
Yeah, but I'm trying to get it out there. I mean, I'd like everybody in the Dallas-Fort Worth, everyone's the sound of my voice, call your churches and tell them churches need to take back the schools. Our schools should be empty because all our kids are going to schools at our churches. You do that, you will change education forever.
Well, it's not a bad idea at all. As a matter of fact, I like it. And yes, I'm as adamant now as I ever have been. If you have a kid in public school, take a second job and put them in private school. Put them in parochial school, homeschool if you can. And I wouldn't say, I'm not dogging teachers. People that go to teach aren't doing it so they can retire at 36 years old in Barbados. They're doing it because they have a love for learning and sharing that information. But once you get the U.S. government, the federal government involved in your education, it becomes less about educating and more about socializing. And I'm not for that. My kids were lucky enough to get through a public education system, as I was, and still be able to critically think. If I had kids going to school right now, there is no way, none, I would put them in public schools. None. And not because of the teachers, because they're top heavy on administrators, and every knucklehead agenda that comes from Washington ends up in your school. I'm just totally against it. Common Core, outcome-based education, the whole 9 yards. But as far as the school shooting, I've always loved Dallas. I always have loved Dallas, even in high school. We would come down and we would have a good time. You had the Cowboys, you had all the stuff. How did we get this mayor? How did we get this mayor pro tem? And is he speaking for you? I don't think so.
Saying to the NRA, reconsider yourselves coming to Dallas. There will be marches and demonstrations should they come to Dallas, and we, Dallas, will be the ones that have to bear the costs, the responsibility, and to protect the citizens.
All right. Once again, with all due respect, if there's any to give, to the mayor pro tem of Dallas, what are you marching for? What are you protesting? Who's unsafe? The NRA is not killing anybody, as far as I know, so what are you talking about? This is political posturing, folks. I've been doing this well over a couple of decades, both on radio and television. Anytime you see a politician jump out like this and speak out of both sides of his mouth, there will be marches, there will be protests, there will be costs to keep the city safe. Safe from whom? The NRA is coming for a convention. What are you talking about? All right. I don't know why I expected any more, but I'm not getting it. Most of you know David Prince. He's the owner of Eagle Gun Range, Farmers Branch in Louisville. Great guy. And he stepped up. Nobody asked him to do a fundraiser for the fallen Richardson police officer. So I wanted to touch base with him on that. And I also wanted to pick his brain a little bit as somebody that's in the firearm business. Let's go to David Prince. David, how are you doing?
I'm great, Rick. How are you today?
I'm doing all right. I'm doing okay. How are we doing with the fundraiser at your place?
Well, thanks to you and your listeners, we're doing awesome. I was hoping to get $10,000, and as of this afternoon, we're at $20,000. We broke the $20,000 mark with over 500 people giving. So,
wow.
Our customers are phenomenal, but your listeners have just stepped up in a real way, and we've got over $1,000 coming in from our website, which was pretty well only publicized on your station. So,
oh, that's great. That's great.
It's been really good. So we had a Richardson police officer stop by our Louisville store after he got off duty. He drove all the way over to Louisville and tearfully thanked us for doing something for his friends, family. So,
when I was out at your place, I don't know, it's been a couple months ago, I guess, some police officers stopped by just to say hello. I mean, you're in a really, really good area, just, like most of Dallas, and you can't thank the police enough. You truly can't. It's they're out there every single day. And by the way, David is doing a raffle. We've got a rifle to give away. We've got a handgun to give away. We've got a fire pit to give away, and the raffle tickets. You can buy as many as you want. Can they do that online, David, or do they have to come inside?
It's $10 for each raffle ticket, and they have to come to the stores for the raffle ticket or call us.
Right.
But this plain donations can go through our website, which is www.eaglegunrangetx.com, and we're going to cut a cashier's check for the entire 100% of the proceeds to go directly to the family. So I have someone that knows the family. They're going to take the check directly to them. Fantastic.
That's, every single penny goes right to the family of that fallen officer. That's great. $20,000. I was thinking about this weekend. That's fantastic,
awesome.
Isn't it?
Yeah, it's just plain awesome. I mean, people love the blue. They don't get enough press, positive press. It never gets out there. But Dallas loves their police officers and first responders, and the Dallas area, and especially our customers and your listeners really support the blue. And I think just in the past, as of right now, I think we've raised well over $50,000 throughout our 5 years on raffling for the police officers. The Little Elm police officer was killed, and the Dallas officers are killed, and then Denton County Heroes, we've given them, raised money for them, and then the Farmers Branch, we raised money for them to be able to buy flashlights for their pistols. So our customers are doing all that. We're not doing it. The customers are doing it. So we appreciate it.
If you reach out with a need, and especially when it comes to law enforcement, which I love what you just said, they get very little positive press. They get a lot of negative press, but they don't get a lot of positive press. Since I've got you, David, I got to ask you about what's going on here in Dallas. You heard what the mayor pro tem had to. Well, I sort of went off, and I was speaking only for myself, nobody else. What does the NRA have to do with any of this?
They're the lightning rod. That's really all it boils down to. They're an easy target, just like it's an easy legislation piece to pass gun control. They don't want to tackle the hard problems. He doesn't want to take the hard problems. Our mayor pro tem and all the city council, they don't want to tackle the problem of being 1,000 officers short. In November, he said this was important. We've got to get this on the agenda now. We've got to, we can't wait a year, 10 years to get our police. We need to do something now. As far as I know, they've done nothing since November to help the Dallas police being 1,000 officers short. We don't have a shortage of law problems. We have a shortage of law enforcement. They're not enforcing their current laws, and there's not enough officers to enforce the current laws.
Exactly.
That's FBI and the police and the federal people. All these mass shootings had all been tipped off. They've all been talked about. The Las Vegas people, shooter. I mean, I think there were 3 calls to the police department or sheriff's department before the shooting ever started. They don't have enough manpower to check everything. You want to do a study, the study should be what's the per capita of police officers to population today.
There you go.
Versus 10 years ago, and you're going to see we're woefully inadequate. And their excuse is, well, we have technology to take their place. Well, okay, how's that working out for you?
Yeah, exactly. I made the statement earlier. As far as I know, nobody's changed the wording. We've had the Second Amendment since the founding of this country. It hasn't changed. What has changed is how we view human life. And that's I know politicians hate to hear this because they look for a quick fix. There is no quick fix to try and bring back that consequence for action or value to human life, which we've imploded on. I mean, that's going to take time. In the meantime, we need people in the schools that are armed.
Absolutely. They're wanting to spend millions trying to go out and confiscate and destroy, AR-15s. But our judges and our legislatures all have protective guards at the door. They can't get through to your judges or your legislature without going through metal detectors and armed guards. But our precious commodity, most precious commodity, our children, you can walk in and open fire without anybody, armed teachers, nobody. they're shooting for 15 minutes before anybody shows up.
Yeah, that little sign, this is a gun-free zone. You need to be taking that thing down
No kid.
before I even quit speaking. I mean, basically, that's, I said this other day to somebody, I don't remember who it was, and I said, would you go home after work tonight and take one of those metal signs and a hammer and put it in your front yard that says, this is a gun-free home? Would you do that? Of course not.
Yes, that's really smart.
Every bad guy in the neighborhood's going to be coming to your house. I mean,
correct.
If you wouldn't do that with your own home, why would you do that to a place where your kid spends 8 hours a day? This is not tough to figure out, David, and it just needs somebody to look for the common sense of what we're dealing with. It just drives me. And this mayor pro tem, I'll wait to pontificate in a little bit. But thank you so much, David, for what you're doing. Again, let's give the locations of where people, if they want to come by and buy a raffle ticket for one of these 2 firearms, they can do so. And again, the website.
It's 14400 Midway Road in Farmers Branch, and 491 West Valley Ridge in Louisville, Texas, and they're $10 each. You can get a chance. All of these firearms have been donated, so we're able to put 100% of the proceeds. But we're in Louisville and Farmers Branch, and we'd love people to stop by. We're open 10 to 9, Monday through Friday, and 9 to 9 on Saturday, and 1 day on Sunday, and stop by and support the Blue.
Well, I really appreciate it. Oh, one last thing, because I've been hearing a bunch of reports all weekend long, and just let me give a program note. I'm going to be going about a minute or two long here. These people saying that, we've got to get rid of these assault weapons, where you pull the trigger and it empties the magazine. That's a fully automatic weapon they're talking about. That's not what AR-15s you buy off the shelf are. I mean, that was... No, go ahead.
Well, that's what Caraway's talking about. He's got them confused. He says that our citizens shouldn't have this better firepower than our police and our military. Well, that is a joke. It's an embarrassment for him to be talking for the city of Dallas, because we don't have any guns better than the police or the military. It's a single semi-automatic. It's against the law, except for certain people, to have a background check like a federal firearms license to get a full auto. So the rest of them are just single-shot rifles, just like any other rifle. The AR-15 is just a lightning rod like the NRA. It's something quick and simple, a sound bite. Just like you said, it's grandstanding. It's just a sound bite for somebody to get some publicity out there. He's not doing his job.
That's it, 100%. If you want the truth, if you want to know about, how many times does it fire? An AR-15. I bought a couple of these. I think I told you, an AR-15 Colt Sporter. Bought 2 of them because the guy was going out of business up in Gillette, Wyoming. And you still have to pull the trigger every time you want the thing to fire. You don't hold the trigger down and it just keeps firing. That's fully automatic. And unless you're a licensed dealer or somebody else with special dispensation, you can't buy one of those. Neither can anybody else. So, correct. First of all, if the liberals want to have a valid argument, let's at least get the facts straight. So at the end of the day, David, you're doing great work. Thank you so much. $20,000 has been raised by the people out there for the family of that fallen soldier. If you want to get in on the raffle, it's a great deal. If you want to just donate, please do so over at David's place. I was out there. It's a great place. You need to run by. David, hopefully we can talk again, because the raffle, you do the drawing in March, correct?
Yes, sir. The first weekend in March.
All right. David Prince, owner of...
Thank you for you.
No, thank you. David Prince, owner of Eagle Gun Range in Farmers Branch in Louisville. Great guy, and he's got lots of information. If you're confused on an issue, call him. He'll answer your question for you. 2:44 the time. I'm Rick Roberts. News Talk 820 WBAP.
Time to get them to the table. They will come to the table because, hey, their Super Bowl is right here. So what better time is it to get them to the table?
Mayor Pro Tem, I don't know. I don't think you do either. This is ridiculous. The Mayor Pro Tem is an embarrassment to the city, and not because of his opinion. You're free to have whatever opinion you want, but what you're saying is inaccurate. What you're saying is it doesn't make sense. By the way, if anybody knows this guy, the Mayor Pro Tem Dwayne Caraway, I realize it's President's Day, and he's probably on vacation. If anybody knows him, he's got an open door invitation. This is not a monologue. I mean, I had David, had to try several different unconventional ways to get a hold of him, right?
Yes, sir. I've found him on Facebook. I sent him a message. I also sent him a tweet, and I got an email out there also. All
right. Well, send the pigeons out and be able to find him that way. He's got an open door. I'd love to chat with you, Mayor Pro Tem. Because it doesn't, like I said, I'm a reasonably intelligent person. I'm not the sharpest knife in the drawer. I got a couple degrees. I don't know that they've ever helped me, but I can generally add 2 and 2, and more often than not, come up with 4. I'm not coming up with anything. You're talking about JFK's assassination? What are you talking about? What's the NRA got to do with any of this? Help me make the connection. All right, let's go to Gary in Keller. Gary, thank you for waiting. How you doing, Gary?
Hey, Rick. Thank you for taking my call. Yeah, you're right on. I think you hit it right. You hit the nail right between the eyes. This is really a value, or as I like to say, a moral problem that we've got in this country, where we devalue human life to the point where kids feel that it's appropriate to walk into schools and kill anybody they don't like or they're having a problem with. And it's a combination of that and the disintegration of the family, and the father's not there to teach the young man how to be a man. He doesn't know how to cope with his emotions, so this is what happens. And I don't know. But, one thing that really bothers me about this whole shooting thing, and I don't hear anybody saying, it seemed to me, as I recall, all the kids in that school and the teachers as well knew about this kid. They knew what he was doing, and they even joked about the fact that he was going to shoot the school up one day. And all of these people knew, that the FBI knew, the local police knew, from what I understand, and nobody did anything. So, is the error in the gun, or is the error in the cowardice and the refusal to, take action, even if it results in a little bit of embarrassment possibly or whatever? But at least, is it worth preventing something like this from happening by yanking this kid aside and saying, hey, what's going on? But nobody did anything. So, if anybody can be blamed for this thing, and I hate to say it, it's the kids themselves, the students themselves. I think, it's enough just to know it's not. You gotta make people aware. You gotta say, hey, wait a minute, this is a problem, and we gotta deal with it. We stop waiting for someone else to come forward. We all have responsibilities in a free society, and we all have a duty to our fellow man. And if they're losing their minds and we think they're going to do something, we have a responsibility as the people who are morally and intellectually and psychologically grounded to speak up and say something and try and prevent a horrible accident. But, about the NRA, they're just the easiest target. It really annoys the heck out of me that this Mayor Pro Tem, goes after the NRA. It had absolutely nothing to do with it.
I don't get it. I can't make the connection. I mean, I've heard several people say, we're going to march, we're going to protest. Well, why are you doing that? Because the NRA is coming to Dallas. So what has that got to do with anything? Well, the school shootings in Florida. Okay, what's that got to do with anything? Well, the Mayor Pro Tem said, okay, well, what has that got to do with anything? And you're right. As far as, the tips on this kid, it looks, we don't know yet because all the evidence isn't in, but it looks like maybe the FBI missed a tip or two. They could be shorthanded. Who knows? They may be too busy, tracking down Russian collusion to deal with a tip or two. I mean, the whole thing is upside down. Students plan protest, a Washington march demanding gun control. Well, with all due respect to the kids, what kind of gun control do you want? I mean, Trump has said he's for expanding background checks. I guess that's okay. But this whole gun control thing, I mean, I used to avoid this like the plague as a talk show host. It's a vicious circle of dialogue, no beginning and no end. But it's gotten to the point now where it's obvious. The mayor pro tem, Mr. Caraway here in Dallas, doesn't have a clue which is up and down, and he's ginning up the constituency, just like the kids. All right, listen close. The kids have been victimized twice. Students in schools that have been shot up and they've had classmates killed, they've been victimized twice. Once by a monster with no value for human life, the second time by the liberals trying to push an agenda and trying to get the kids drove up about something they probably know nothing about. Yeah, I said it. They're being used to push an agenda, to push a narrative. And that's a damn shame.
This is the news and talk of Texas. Now, it's the Rick Roberts Show on 820 AM, 99.5 FM, HD2, News Talk 820, WBAP.
Well, I know there's got to be a few 100 million more like me, just trying to keep it free. Yeah.
Rick Roberts starts right now.
All right, 3:04 the time, 1-800-288-WBAP, 1-800-288-9227. If you're listening outside the state of Texas, I apologize. I apologize for I have a running apology for our mayor, but now I need to apologize for our mayor pro tem. Besides being inaccurate, he just doesn't know what he's talking about. He's politically posturing. I'm sure he's going to run for something before too long. And I'll tell you why. I just got this in just a moment ago. All of these, the sky is falling. What do we do now? Let's go to March on Washington. It's a uniquely liberal mindset that someone else is responsible for solving our problems. As I said in the first hour, the Second Amendment hasn't changed since the country was founded. The only thing that's changed is us, and not for the better. I just got this in, and I won't give the last name. First name Mark, I think, out of San Antonio. Why is it not acceptable to gun owners to limit the type of guns available to individual citizens? Well, it is acceptable, and it's also law. He goes on, it is asking the question, is it not reasonable to limit ownership of any gun which by pulling a trigger automatically fires a bullet without having to reload manually? Or is that already a law? Well, Mark, it's a good question. No, you can't go buy a fully automatic weapon unless you have a dealer's license or you have special dispensation as, the general public cannot walk in and buy a fully automatic weapon. Doesn't work. Remember the bump stocks out of Vegas? They wanted to get rid of those because it would take a semi-automatic and turn it in a fashion, turn it into a fully automatic. Basically, when it fires, it recoils, which makes it fire again. No. See, they're not even getting that right. This entire discussion doesn't need to be about the guns. That part doesn't even matter. Guns have been around forever. Second Amendment's been around forever. Why are we seeing kids shooting up schools? Because there's no value to human life anymore. Society is imploded, and we're just now getting, the brief snippets of what's to come. It's going to get worse. Somebody called up, well, okay, Mr. Smart Guy, what would you do? First thing you ask, I'll tell you. Put armed security at every school. Limit your way in and your way out. Put armed security in every school. That's a short-term fix. Understand that, not long-term. And then you bring back You bring back the value of human life in every way you possibly can. I said it before. If you're using abortion as a form of birth control, you're part of the problem. You're part of the problem. Devaluing human life is a slippery slope. You make people... What? No, I'm serious. There's responsibility for your action. You hold people to consequence. Well, Rick, you're talking about the 1950s. No, I wasn't even born then. I'm talking about some reasonable facsimile of an orderly society wherein human life has value. You know, I'm watching, you got all these kids that are being used like pawns on a chessboard by the left. They're staging a lie-in Washington. What are they protesting? Their school shootings. They have no clue what they're doing. They're being manipulated by the left. The left, their agenda is very clear. Disarm everybody they can. Trump is going to meet with some of the students and teachers and law enforcement on school safety. I don't know what that's going to do. I don't really know what the lie-in is all about. You got kids lying all over the place in Washington. What are you doing? Protesting school shooting. Okay, well, what is this for? To call attention to it? I'm sorry, the kids don't know better. The adults that are organizing and manipulating these kids, victimizing them twice, do know what they're doing. Let's go to Mike in Dallas. Mike, thank you for waiting. How you doing, Mike?
Hey, Rick, how's it going, man?
Good.
Haven't talked to you in a while.
How you doing?
Yeah. Well, first off, I've been on the hold for 50 minutes, and I thought of something a little different than what I told the screener about. You remember when George Bush was president? They were saying after the shooting, they said it's the gun manufacturer's fault. So they wanted to sue the gun manufacturers for the shootings.
Right.
And then Bush passed the Protection of Lawful Commerce and Arms Act. So they couldn't sue the manufacturers for these crazy shootings. But my take on it is that, in the Old West, everyone had a gun, and there were very few shootings. Now, there were no gun-free zones in the Old West. There wasn't a gun-free zone. I think it's a gun-free zone. You look at how many shootings have there been at the handgun armory places where they have the target practicing. I know of one in my lifetime. So wherever there's guns, where everybody has a gun, the shooters, they don't go there. They go where there's, no defense. Like I go to a college here, and we got, I think, 3 or 4 police officers always on staff, and now it's legal for the students to have guns in school and in the class. So I don't think there's ever going to be a shooting in there. If there is a shooting, it's going to be in a gun-free zone.
Well, let me ask you one thing, if I may. I used this analogy before. Is whether it's a restaurant or a commercial business, that little circle with the mark through it over the silhouette of a firearm, we're a gun-free zone. I don't go to those places because they're just telling the bad guys, hey, come here. And would you, tonight, when you get home, would you hammer a sign in your front yard, this is a gun-free home?
Of course not.
Why not?
Of course not. Because that's ridiculous. That's crazy.
Why is it? Wait a minute. You say it's ridiculous and crazy. You got those signs up where our kids spend 8-9 hours a day. So why would it not be?
That's crazy.
Yeah, that's crazy too.
All the teachers should have guns. Everyone that can have one, and they should have at least 3 or 4 police officers. And the place should be barricaded. Cop shop has to be have a fence around it. Then the schools definitely have to have a fence around it. Come on.
Yeah, I agree with that. Unfortunately, we can't even get a fence around the police station parking lot. I don't know what's happened to the city of Dallas. I truly don't. We've got a mayor that's just left of Nancy Pelosi, and a mayor pro tem that is, trying to pull a wool over everyone's eyes. Don't come to Dallas, NRA. What are you talking about? Well, this is where JFK was killed. Yeah, everybody knows that. Your point? He doesn't have any points. All right, your call. I'll tell you what. We all know what the left is doing, what they're manipulating, what they're trying to do. Name me one thing how we can restore human value to society, because that's what it's going to take to finally end all this.
They were called together effectively by social media, a few dozen area high school students and some adults in front of the White House. Most of their signs were handmade, and silently, 17 of them stretched out on the pavement, a lie-in, as they described it, representing each victim in last Wednesday's Florida massacre. They were on the ground, eyes closed, for 3 minutes, the length of time it took for 17 Florida high schoolers and staffers to be killed. President Trump, set to host high school students Wednesday in what's being described as a listening session, was still at his Florida resort at the time. Bob Costantini, Washington.
All right. Thanks to Westwood One News for that. Who do you think got that started? Bunch of teenagers lying on the ground in front of the White House for 3 minutes, the length of time it took Cruz to kill 17 people. And yes, it looks as though the FBI missed quite a few tips on Cruz. Looks like we just dropped the ball altogether. Like I said, maybe the FBI was too busy looking into Russian meddling and didn't have the manpower to follow up on Cruz. Yes, I'm being disingenuous. It's ridiculous. You know, everywhere you look, everybody's trying to find a quick fix. We didn't get here overnight. It's not going to be solved overnight. A quick fix? You arm people inside the schools. Take down those stupid gun-free zone signs. Stop advertising yourself as a soft target. Arm somebody inside the hallway. Well, Rick, I never thought. Well, I didn't either, but that's where we are. And then while that is going on, try to bring back some human value to society. And that's going to be, that's going to have to be a national movement. You're going to have to fight liberals every step of the way. You're taking away my rights for this or that or the other thing. I don't, look, have all the rights you want. Let's stop devaluing human life. That's the problem. It's not an AR-15 or a handgun or a knife or a brick. It's the fact we don't value human life anymore. We have imploded as a society. That's the problem. And that's not going to be fixed over the weekend. Angelo in Arlington. Angelo, thank you for waiting. How you doing?
Good afternoon. I'm doing terrific. I thank God that I am no longer a Democrat, liberal, and don't have cockeyed ideas or thought processes.
Okay, I'm going to put you on hold, Angelo, because we got a really bad connection. Let's see if we can get a better connection. Dale in Weatherford. Dale, thank you for waiting. How you doing, Dale?
Yes, sir. I'm doing great. Thank you, Rick, for taking my call. And as always, it's awesome to listen to you.
Thank you so much.
Yes, sir. I just, going over this whole deal, I mean, you hit the nail on the head as far as what you'd asked earlier, what would be the fix, and it's valuing human life. But also the answer to that is to cut out the...
I'm sorry, cut out what? All right, we're having a time. Let's. I'm going to put.
It's the way they wanted to push society in the first place.
Okay, you cut out on me there, Dale. So, if it wouldn't be an inconvenience, the fix was what?
To cut out progressive liberalism as it is now.
Yep.
That's what's ruined our country. I mean, they wanted to be progressive, and this is what it gets you.
No, agreed. Agreed. I agree with you. I don't know the guy down the street, but his life should be as valuable to me as anybody else I know because he's another human being. I mean, to me, that's progressive, is it not?
Oh, it is. And they preach love, but yet they're okay with the murdering of unborn children. And it's just, it's with everything else, just like the teachers in my own child's high school with the progressive liberalism day in and day out and the brainwashing attempting that tries to go on. It's day in and day out, and that's what we're fighting.
You're right.
We're fighting it day in and day out with being accepting of everyone's, feelings, their culture, their love. And I agree with that. I don't disagree with that. However, when you devalue human life and you devalue those things by saying one thing in one hand and doing the complete opposite, this is where you are as a society. And the way you wanted to live when kids can't even decide what bathroom they need to go to because we're worried about gender and we're worried about everything else, this is what you get.
I couldn't agree.
And by the book that I read, there is only one author of confusion, and I'm sure you read that same book.
You bet. And, the more ground you give, the more he will take. And I just don't understand. I know people are smarter than this. They must be. Their bias is clouding their vision. They don't see the forest for the trees, and throw in any other cliche you want right there. But, just like Fort Worth Independent School District, we've got a bathroom room dilemma. You don't have a bathroom dilemma. You don't have a transgender dilemma. You've got a dilemma over trying to figure out how to educate kids in a public school system. That's not progressive. All it does, we have devalued the human condition to the point where these things are going to be the rule rather than the exception. And that gives me no pleasure to say so. We have got to stop liberalism run amok in this country, or there won't be a country left, period.
Absolutely.
I appreciate a very good call. It's how do I put this? How do I put the do an experiment. Do an experiment. Watch, and I don't watch a lot of television. I've got TV on 24/7 on news channels. There are a few shows I watch just to veg out, not very many, but watch what's being portrayed as human life on TV. Watch what's being portrayed as life at various movies. I'm not a movie guy either. Very rarely can I sit still for 2 hours. But I mean, it's pervasive in our culture. It's as weird as we can get. I lost track. As a matter of fact, what movie was that? It was on television, and it was I don't recall, but it was they were shooting people. It was so obvious. I thought, my God, I wonder how many people have been shot in this movie so far. I mean, it was like over the top. That's an indication of where we have gone. That's entertainment. And I enjoy, a good TV show or a good movie just like anybody else. But there has to be some value to human life. This whole thing with Planned Parenthood. Your tax dollars shouldn't be going to that. You shouldn't be going to that. As I said before, if you're using abortion as a form of birth control, you got it backwards, and you're a part of the problem. You can't go around getting rid of that many human lives and not have some consequence for the action. The consequence is there's not value in human life anymore. It's dispensable. Well, I'm through with that. I can throw that away and move on down the road. I normally don't get in those discussions because people take a visceral reaction to it. But that's the way it is. We are getting, you used to be said, you get the government you deserve. Now you get the society that you deserve. Think about that one. All right, 3:32 the time. Want to get right to your calls. This is disgusting. This really is. These kids all being manipulated by social media. And look, I was born at night, but not last night. An adult is doing this, using these kids. First, they're victimized by a crazed shooter. Now they're victimized by a liberal with an agenda, or several, staging a lie-in at the nation's capital. And the protests. Students are planning protest, a Washington march. You think they put this all together themselves? They're demanding gun control. What type? They don't know, but they just know it needs to be gun control because that's what they've been told. Well, what exactly would they want? They don't know. Again, if you want to take care of this, put an armed police officer in every school or several limit the ways in and out. Well, Rick, we don't want our public schools looking like, well, do you want your public school shut up? No. When you let your society go down that slippery slope of liberalism, where there are no rules, no regulations, no guidelines, there are no consequences for action, there are all rights and no responsibility. When you allow that, this is what you get. This is going to happen again and again and again. Because that's where we are as a society. This has nothing to do with any legislation. There's no legislation that says you can sell guns to teenagers so they can go shoot up schools or kill their next door neighbor or the guy that didn't give them a good grade. Look, this is a societal problem. It's not a gun problem. But all of these, like the Mayor Pro Tem Caraway in Dallas, all these people politically posturing, they're, as far as I'm concerned, they're just victimizing people all over again. That's all they're doing. They know just as well as anybody else. I hope they know. There is no type of gun control that's going to keep this type of behavior from happening. The kid will go out, sit in his car, wait for the bell to ring. Kids walk out and run over as many as he can. What are you going to do? Ban cars? No. We all watched in horror the morning of 9/11 as the Twin Towers fell, and the Pentagon was attacked, and that empty farm field. Did we ban airplanes? No, we didn't. Because we realized that was a societal thing. In their society, in their culture, they felt certain. That was just an instrument of destruction for them. Society has fallen so far that we can expect this to become the rule and not the exception. There is no type of hardware control that's going to stop this. The only thing that's going to stop this, as far as I'm concerned, is accountability to each other. Just because you have some liberal idea of how the world should work does not mean you need to be validated. We need to return value to human life, all human life. And we need to start hitting our knees again and realizing that there's a higher power than us. He's called God. And if you totally remove him from whatever, schools or any facet of society, he will be replaced by something else. It's like Bush told Obama, if you withdraw too early before we finish the job, you'll create a vacuum that will be filled with something more evil and will have to return to finish the job. What happened? Barack Obama ran on ending the war. He did. He pulled out. That vacuum was filled by ISIS. And we had to go back. Well, we're right here in the United States. You want to remove God? If you can, go ahead. But you need to get ready for something that you never planned on. Banning guns, banning ammunition, banning knives, that's just the politician's way of saying, hey, vote for me, I'm going to do something for you, when they know they can't. Because they know if they have any modicum of intelligence, it's not that. It's human behavior. It's the devaluation of human life. We don't value human life in this country anymore. I remember when I first started my talk show career, and it happened quite by accident. The first case was Allie Borales. You may remember the bloodhound Yogi. She was taken from her front yard, little girl. The bloodhound tracked the missing girl down the interstates, the side streets, the frontage roads. The dog ended up finding the girl dead. Then Megan Kanka. And then it just went on and on and on. And then the last time I was in Dallas here, we all talked about a way that we could maybe get the information out quicker. And now we have that. An Amber's Alert. But it took years. It took years to make something like that happen. We can't afford to sit around and let this happen any longer. If we don't do something to restore value to human life, this place won't be worth living in. All right. Let's go to your calls. David in Wichita Falls. David, thanks for waiting. How you doing, David?
Doing fine, Rick. How about yourself?
Doing well, thanks.
Hey, first of all, I'm a member of the NRA, and I'm also a retired police officer from up here in Wichita. But here's my deal. What do you think about these video games these kids play? You know, where they walk down a hallway or building, they're just shooting each other, shooting everybody. Don't they make it look a little glamorous? You know what I mean?
No, I know what you're saying. You know, several people have asked me about that. It's not just a video game or just a movie or just a TV show or just what they see out of elected officials. It's everything combined, which desensitizes one to death and dying.
That's right. But, you know, when me and you was kids, we had front porches on our house. You know, we sat on the front porch in the evening, maybe cut a watermelon or made homemade ice cream or something. Now everybody's in the house playing on their iPods or iPhones, laptops, computers. There's no social skills anymore, these kids. You know, they don't hardly fish. They don't do nothing. They sit around and play on them dadgum video games.
Well, I think you're right, David, in the sense that, you know, most of what we see now are emotional and social cripples. And I say that quite literally with video games where you can, and I'm being quite frank with you here, I'm not making this up, you can run over several people, shoot several people on your way to pick up a hooker, open the door, let her come in, be sexually gratified as you're driving down the street, firing with your left hand. Now, you take that type of video game, match it with some of the movies that are out there, you match that with some of the television shows that are out there, and it's not any one thing. You follow me? It's not just one thing. It's an entire environment that is comprised of that. You know, first of all, if you don't want to be a parent, if you don't want to take your kid out in the backyard, Mom, what is that bright glowing object? Well, that's called the sun. If you don't want to be a parent, please don't have kids. You know, we don't want to take care of somebody else's problem. But guess what? You are anyway. You know, it's an entire society. And not just a video game or a movie or this or that. It's an entire society. I tell you what, if we could get about 50% of these kids back in church. Oh, Rick, that's always what you say. It's God, it's the church. Well, that's what I believe because I've seen it work time and time again. And if you don't get back to some semblance of that, I mean, you can write this thing off. Take the first boat off this rock because nothing's going to change. It's just going to get worse. All right, 3:46 the time. Glad you're along. 1-800-288-WBAP, 1-800-288-9227. Yeah, I'm just as confounded as you are. How do we turn the last 60, 70 years around? How do you do that? How do you reinstill the value of human life? How do you reinstill consequence for action? How do you teach there are no rights without responsibility? How do you do those things? Because that is the problem, folks. It's not the NRA. It's not a firearm manufactured someplace. It's the fact that we changed. How we raised our kids changed. How we educate our kids changed. What they are immersed in that we call society, it changed. And that's not an overnight fix. That's the bad news. The quick fix is arming people inside schools to protect the kids while they're there. That's a Band-Aid. The permanent fix is turning society back around. Should have never gotten to this point to begin with. but it did. Let's go to Jerry. Jerry in Rockwall. Jerry, thank you for waiting. Hi.
Thanks for taking my call, Rick. My theory is that the further you move away from the epicenter of a problem, the less effective your solutions become. And in this case, the kids of that school knew more than anybody and had already connected the dots. There needs to be an avenue for these kids to be able to express themselves about their concerns about somebody in that school via an anonymous email or anonymous website, anonymous contact, or not anonymous. But those kids knew what was going on. They know more than anybody, and they could have predicted this, and they did predict this. I wish every school system would start, and it almost cost nothing to start, almost nothing, and they could have possibly prevented this. The parents didn't know, the police didn't know, the FBI didn't know. Nobody knew but those kids in that school.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. What you're talking about is is how to give them a voice, in some cases anonymously, I would think, but a voice so that, and then follow up, because it's obvious. You know, the police were called to this monster's house 39 times in 5 years.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah. 39 times in, just at 5 years. They were called to, it wasn't his home. It's where he was staying. His parents were dead. He was staying with a friend and his parents. They took him in. But the police were called 39 times in 5 years. That's a red flag in anybody's book.
And that would not have happened when you and I were growing up.
Oh, no, not quite.
We'd have been kicked out of school.
Well, I would have been too afraid to go home and face my grandfather. So, yeah, there's no, and again, you and I can sit here and say, well, back in the good old days, maybe they were good in some areas, not quite as good in others, but the end of the road is this. The end of the road is a devaluation of human life and where we are right now. And you're going to have to turn that around if you want this kind of behavior to stop.
And I just want to say one other thing is that I listen to your show all the time. I'm a first-time caller, and I really appreciate your voice out there.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. And you're right. When we were going to school in the late 60s or 70s, this type of thing didn't happen. There were fist fights. I mean, if anybody pulled a bat out of their car, and the funny thing, not funny, haha, but the ridiculous thing is, when I was going to high school, just about, and I, grew up in kind of a rural area, just about everybody had a truck or, just about everybody had a truck. And, they called them the Easy Rider rifle racks after Peter Fonda's movie Easy Rider. Well, they were in there before the movie, and there was either a shotgun or a, varmint gun or something. And when people went out in the parking lot, to bring it, they got in some argument, wanted a fist. It was either a fist fight or why would you pull a bat out of the car when you got a rifle hanging in your back window? Because there was a value to human life. Yeah, I want to mess this guy up, but I don't want to kill anybody. Yeah, I want, we're going to roll in the dirt, but I'm not going to kill anybody. Back in another life, I spent some time, Brazos Bend. Do you know where that is? Richmond, Rosenberg's, Sugarland, south of Houston. And, back in the day, as it were, I would be known to go to several bars like Ed's Silver Spur and some other places. And there's a sign right there. Check your guns when you walk in. And some guys did, some guys didn't. And there was a fight every Friday or Saturday night. How do I know? Well, I heard, or I might have been there. Nobody ever got shot. Just why? Because there was that mental stop where this is a human life. Do I want to take another human life? There was that mental gauge that we don't have anymore. It's like when you were a little kid and you got your first mini bike or go-kart or whatever it was. You wanted to go as fast as you wanted to go, but your grandfather or your father put a governor on it. What did that do? That kept it from going over 35 or miles an hour, whatever it was. And we used to have that. We used to have that governor in our brain that said, I'm not taking this. I'm really mad. I'm going to lash out, but I don't want to kill anybody. Now those governors don't exist anymore. Do you follow what I'm saying? Does that make sense? It's like life simply has no more value. It has no more value than a movie, than a TV show, than a video game, than the games, these role-playing games that kids play, the social media. I got to be honest with you. Social media is okay. It's all right. It's the internet's a valuable thing, but man, there's an awful lot of downside to it. And if you're a parent that has a kid that's on the internet more than he's talking to you, you've got a problem. If you go to a restaurant, I defy you to see every table where people are talking together. Somebody's got their nose in their phone. In some cases, they all have their noses in their phone. What did we do before we had cell phones? I mean, well, Rick, that's an awful broad brush. It is, because technology's expanded. We've stopped parenting kids. We stopped going to church. Somebody emailed me, well, Rick, I don't believe in God at all, but I don't kill anybody. I don't have to fear an afterlife. I don't believe in. That's not what it's all about. Is it a concern? Of course. But it's a way of living your life where you try to enhance those around you, not kill them. If you disagree, we can't even disagree politically without getting down in the dirt. Bottom line, society has imploded, period, end of story. Now, the question is, how do we get it back?
This is the news and talk of Texas. Now, it's the Rick Roberts Show on 820 AM, 99.5 FM, HD2, News Talk 820, WBAP.
Well, I know there's got to be a few 100 million more like me, just trying to keep it free. Yeah.
Rick Roberts starts right now.
All right, 4 minutes after the hour, 4:04 the time. And as these teenagers are being victimized a second time, being manipulated and ginned up by the anti-gun lobbies, which is a shame in itself, everybody's looking around saying, how do we do this? How do we stop this? The Dallas Mayor Pro Tem came out with his little dog and pony show, hoping, I guess, to convince people that didn't know anything that the NRA was somehow responsible. That is the most ludicrous thing I've heard today. Gun owners are somehow responsible. What we have to do is bring back the value of human life in society. It's a societal problem, not a gun problem. My idea, for what it's worth, put police officers in the schools. Well, Rick, I never thought it would come to that. Well, I didn't either. But then again, society has slipped down that slippery slope a lot quicker than I ever thought it would. And until we get some value attached to human life once again, then you need police officers in schools. One emailer said, make them substations. Not jails, obviously, but substations. That's the quick fix. The hard work, if people are up to it, is trying to turn this society around and start valuing human life. Hank in Arlington. Hank, thanks for waiting. How you doing, Hank?
Hey, I'm doing pretty good. How are you?
Good.
Hey, listen, you keep saying, what's Dwayne Caraway up to? Last time he got on one of these NRA rants about a shooting, he was yada, 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 yada. Somebody asked him, he said, what does the NRA have to do with any of this? He said, well, they need to help out. They need to get involved. He said, well, how do they do that? He said, well, they got money.
They've got money?
Yep, that's what he said. It was on the news. I saw him say it. So that's what it's all about. And you've made up some good points. And I'm a retired military Vietnam veteran who's a qualified expert with a whole bunch of weapons. And you're talking about magazines. I made a video and put it on Facebook where I fired 30 rounds in the 5 and 4 zone on the target 20 feet away in 20 seconds. And it doesn't have anything to do with that. You're right. It has to do with society being denigrated. Period. That's it.
That's it. That's the whole thing. There's no value attached to human life any longer, to some.
Yep. And Dr. Murray Banks, who's a world-renowned clinical psychologist a long time ago, said that people will do anything to get attention. And when you think of it that way and you see these nuts out on the street with a sign, right, they're getting attention. They're not accomplishing anything. If you want to try to turn this thing around, do away with all the free stuff the government hands out so people have to go out and make a living, and it'll help out a lot.
Well, that's all part of it. Consequence for action. The problem in this country is that everybody thinks they have a right, but they don't have any responsibility.
Absolutely. And what do these things have in common? 9/11, flight school warned the feds about the students. The Boston Marathon bombing, the Russians warned us about those. The nightclub shooting down in Florida, the gun store warned them about this guy coming in. The guy in Colorado was warned. They warned them about this guy was a nut. And now you've got this same thing happening again. What do they all have in common? The government's not doing nothing.
No. Well, recall in the Vegas shooting, the thing that came out of that were these bump stocks where you could, in a fashion, not totally, but in a fashion, take a semi-auto and make it fully auto. We got to get rid of those. The NRA even said that was a good idea. What's happened? Yep. Nothing.
Yep. And the AR-15, when it was developed by Gene Stoner at Armalite, it was a fully automatic, semi-automatic burst weapon made specifically to sell to the military. The military bought it. They renamed it the M16, called it an assault rifle. Armalite continued to make the civilian model, which is nothing more than a semi-automatic weapon. And it still says AR-15. Okay, now the idiots added AR-15, meaning assault rifle. No, it stands for Armalite.
Well, I was talking to David Prince earlier at Eagle Gun Range. This has been, decades ago. I happened to be in Gillette, Wyoming, in another life, when I was overseeing some projects, oil and gas, and a gun store was going out of business. And I bought 2 Colt AR-15 Sporters because they were marked down to his cost, and I bought them for investment purposes. I didn't buy them because they were scary looking. I didn't buy them because some liberal thought they were fully automatic. I just bought them because they were lightweight. You could, the 223 round is a halfway decent round if you're looking for cost when it comes to ammunition. And when I say that, people, aghast. Oh my God, you have one of those assault weapons. Well, yep. I've never assaulted anything with it.
The only assault deal is what the military called it. Before the AR-15 that turned into the M16, they had the M14. And the military called that the main battle.
But Hank, the problem is you've got the liberal narrative out there that leaves these facts conveniently out of their diatribe. So they've got the entire city on pins and needles thinking, people are going to come blasting into their homes or into their schools. And it's not about the weapon anyway. It's not about whether it's a 22 single shot bolt action or an AR-15. It's not about that. It's about the fact that we just don't value human life in this country like we used to.
And these people, it's about control. It's about power. Nothing more than that. The government wants power over you. And if you want to stop and think about it, the Constitution stands in their way.
Yeah, it does. You're right. Yeah, the Second Amendment hasn't changed one word as far as I know. The only thing that's changed is us. And that's what we've got to fix. All right, 4:15 the time. Let's get right to your calls. Carmen in Aledo. Carmen, thanks for waiting. How you doing?
I'm doing okay, Rick. Thank you so much for taking my call. Hey, listen, I think your pilot experience is screaming loud and clear to me because I think you are spot on in identifying the problem, and that is the lack of virtue in our society. And I also totally agree with you about what we need to do with our schools with regard to law enforcement, and also I would say arming of teachers. It reminds me, being a retired captain, about the argument we had in the discussion after 9/11 with regard to arming pilots and bringing air marshals on board. Wasn't the solution. It was nothing more than the last line of defense. So if we are going to arm, the teachers, we need to use that as a model to make sure that they're adequately vetted and trained, and I think that's the start. But we also need to restore virtue to this country, and I think one way we start doing that is we get on our knees and we start praying to God that He protects our country and that He gives us the courage to do what we need to do to start turning this virtue around. And also, I think probably a public service campaign, because like you pointed out, the liberals are once again winning the narrative and causing these kids to go out there and demonstrate what they don't even know what they're demonstrating about. So we need to take control of the narrative and defeat liberalism. I think a public service campaign, social media, conveying the importance of respecting the rule of law, respecting life, respecting authority, and know that there's going to be accountability for one's actions.
I agree 100%. It started with me, at least, in Ferguson, Missouri. And yeah, I'm biased. I have direct family members in law enforcement. But this whole idea that the cops are the bad guys, and I'm sorry, but the administration, Barack Obama's administration, threw that police officer under the bus without the evidence being in. And then it went from there to New York, and New York to Chicago, and Chicago to L.A., and just about everywhere. It gave rise to the Black Lives Matter. We got to get a handle again. We've got to know, we need the connection between the police and the community. These cops go out there every day, men and women, doing nothing more than watching our back. And we should watch their six as well. I mean, I don't get how anybody thinks that this is making for a better society. Obviously, it's not.
No, I totally agree, Rick. And, and every time we see one of those events regarding police officers, do we ever hear of the other side of the coin? It's always the police officer, always the police officer. We ever hear, hey, people, how about respecting a police, that approaches you? I was taught growing up as a kid, you respect a police officer, you respect your elders. You say, yes, sir, no, ma'am, thank you. Where is the respect for the police? Why isn't the communities and the parents teaching the kids, hey, you need to respect the police officer. If there's a problem, then bring it to my attention, and I'll take it up with the police, chief or whatever.
Yeah, I 100% agree. We have to get back to that semblance of normalcy. If we don't, you can write this society off in another 50, 60 years. It won't be worth living here. It just won't. We're going to fall into anarchy and probably socialism. And there are many in this country that want to see just that happen. Carmen, good call as always. Let's go to Chris in Dallas. Chris, thanks for waiting. How you doing?
I'm doing fine, Rick. I appreciate you taking my call.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, my two boys, they go to a private school here in Dallas, and if they forget something at home or something, I have to take it to them. You can't get in that school without them buzzing you in, and as soon as you walk in, there's someone there there waiting for you to come in. So that would be and if we done that to the public schools and then have a police officer there to meet everybody that comes in, that would be a short-term fix. But in the long haul, the problem we have in the country is the 3 R's. We got too many rights, not enough respect, and no responsibility.
Oh, I like that. That's good.
Yeah, and also I wanted to touch on Dwayne Caraway's fiasco that he had down there this morning. He wants to change the gun laws, the Second Amendment. And the base of his argument is that when the Second Amendment was written, there wasn't any semi-automatic or automatic weapons. So we could take the same base and apply it to the First Amendment, which is freedom of speech and religion. And I've done a lot of research, and I've heard a lot of, constitutional scholars say the same thing. When they wrote the First Amendment, denomination wasn't a word. Every year
right.
they add words to the dictionary. So let's just take the same base of Caraway's argument on the Second Amendment and apply it to the First Amendment, and let's just change freedom of religion and change that to freedom of denomination, because that's what the forefathers meant. That's why all our currency from that point on had "In God We Trust." So his argument doesn't hold water, and if he does continue to argue that, he's just opened up a big can of worms, because some of these constitutional scholars is going to hit him on it and try to correct the First Amendment, if you know what I'm saying.
No, I got you.
We got a freedom of denomination. So,
let me ask you something, Chris. If we were to meet on the street for a cup of coffee, and I were to ask you, with all the school shootings and the mass murders and all of this, right. You and I both know it's not about the weapon; it's about who's behind it, and their obvious lack of value for human life. How do you begin to restore value to human life in a society? How do you do that?
Well, accountability is number one. You got to be accountable for all of your actions. That's whether you slam a door in someone's face or you pull a gun on someone. You need to be held accountable for everything that you do and don't do. Because a lot of problems is we're focused on what people are doing, and we need to focus on what people are not doing. This kid he had major problems. We can't he needs to be held accountable for his actions. You can't hold everybody that has a weapon in America accountable for what this guy done. You just can't do it. Everyone needs to be held to their own actions. Yeah. And they need to treat everybody with respect and take some responsibility for what's going on in your life. Like I said, we got too many rights, and when I tell people that, they say, "What are you talking about?" Yeah, we have too many rights, man. We shouldn't be able to just call. We shouldn't be able to just call people what we want to call them. You see people videoing these police officers, calling them pigs, calling them racist, and you shouldn't be able to do that.
No, you shouldn't.
Leave that, but people have the right to do it, which I think is ridiculous. Leave that man alone. Let him do his job. Everybody makes mistakes. If you take 100 people, one person's going to make a mistake every now and then. He'll be held accountable. That's what the police, department does. They hold policemen accountable for when policemen do wrong. Quit trying to impede on this man doing his job and allow him to do his job, because he's taking responsibility when he signed up to be a police officer to, do his job correctly, and let the higher power hold him accountable. We can't, like I said, we just got too many rights, man.
You got too many rights without enough responsibility. Very, very good call, Chris. I appreciate it greatly. Please don't be a stranger. I debated back and forth whether I even wanted to get into something I'm about to do, because I know there's such a visceral reaction both ways. But I can't. If you're going swimming, you can't do it by dipping your toe in the water. You got to get in all the way. So when we come back, I'm going to comment. Robert Fleischman is a great writer, and I'm going to do something I don't normally do. I don't think I've ever done. Maybe I should have. The value of human life, because that's really what we're talking about. Yeah, 39 visits by police to your home, that ought to set up a red flag for anybody. But this is going to happen again. And it gives me no pleasure in saying that. But it's going to happen again until we start examining the value of human life. Now, if you don't care, there's nothing I can do about that. But we need to examine what happened to the value of human life. 4:33 the time. I'm Rick Roberts. This is the Court of Public Opinion with you every day. Monday through Friday from 2 to 5, your afternoon drive. I don't normally get off into this. I'm no poster boy for Christianity. I will be the first to admit that. However, I am a believer, and I believe that it's somehow easier when you do believe in God to see the value in human life. You know, it's becoming more and more difficult to know what to do in life and death situations. I mean, you've got advancement in medicine, you've got lawsuits, you've got challenges in court, changing opinions depending on what decade you were born. Those all raise questions about when life begins, what its value is, and when it ends. Now, those are complex issues. Christians, and I'm not speaking for all Christians, I'm just giving you my opinion, they can find help through scriptures. The Bible doesn't address every life and death circumstance. It just doesn't. Certainly not that we encounter today. It does, however, establish principles to guide us. The biblical principle guides Christian understanding of the existence of life, the quality of life, and the right to choose, obviously, medical treatment. Yes, I'm going to use the A word, abortion. Early abortion, these debates, they center on whether there really is a human life in the womb. Specifically, the contention was made by abortion advocates that, well, it's not really life, it's potential life. They don't deny that the fetus is alive, but they do question whether the quality of its health or the degree of its development deserves to be called a human life. So in ethical terms, does it have the quantity which is human life? Well, you're going to find all type of people to debate this issue. Advocates, ethicists, philosophers, they all debate the question. Well, the scripture states the case is pretty clear. Simply put, either there is life or there isn't life. There are not degrees of human life. It either exists or it doesn't. The Bible doesn't go into, well, it's 10% or it's 20% or, well, if you go to the Psalms, they acknowledge, surely I have been a sinner from birth, from the time I was conceived. The key word there is sinful. Now, sinfulness is an attribute of human life. Nobody's without it. Its condition makes the human life accountable to the Creator, who demands perfection, or seeking it, at least. There is no distinction between birth and conception. At both points, sinfulness is the condition. Human life is the reality. While that condition of life at conception clearly distinguishes the humanity of all that is life, the redemptive work of Christ gives evidence of its value. Remember, we were talking about the value of human life. He is the atoning sacrifice for the sins, and not only for yours and mine, but for the entire world. Jesus Christ didn't die for potential life, or 10% life, or 20% life. Products of conception are parts of the mother's body. He died for human beings, marked by sin and in need of Him as a Savior. In that sense, God is no respecter of persons. God does not show favoritism. You can look that up in Romans. In His work of saving souls, all human life has absolute and equal value. Equal value as a redeemed soul does not mean that equal qualities of life are enjoyed by every person. Life does come with varying degrees of quality. So you get into the quality of life debate. Statements about the quality of life are no longer only evaluations of a person's standard of living. They're becoming the criteria for life and death decisions. Expressions dominate medical decision-making terminology. You hear and read terms like meaningful life, prevailing interest, persistent vegetative state. You hear that all the time. Those expressions are often used with implied comparison. Will a child born with Down syndrome enjoy a meaningful life in comparison to a so-called normal child? Do the mother's concern represent a prevailing interest over the unborn child? Is the patient in a persistent vegetative state, implying the patient has the value of a vegetable in comparison to normal people? In life and death decisions, the question is not, is this a life, but is it good enough, in my opinion, to continue? Does it have the qualities of a human life? You see, the world measures the quality of a human life in degrees of enjoyment. It's a yardstick, if you will. The yardstick measures pleasure, prosperity, position, opinion. Is it a life that can be enjoyed, bring joy to others, or contribute to the well-being of society? That's how we measure things. There is no question that life does have varying degrees of quality, made that way by God. That's in Proverbs and Romans. To some come the blessings of wealth and health and prosperity and popularity. And there are others that have the burden of illness, handicap, hardship, and in most cases, there's a blend of blessings and burdens, all right? But in all circumstances, we're encouraged to learn contentment. God teaches that all human life is a gift, regardless of its quality, and is worthy of our respect and protection. You know, Jesus didn't die for a few, he died for everybody. Even those with poor quality lives should live for him. That's in Corinthians. You know, if you look, the equal high value of all human life was expressed with the words, whoever sheds the blood of man, by man shall his blood be shed. For in the image of God has God made man. Now, you know, I'm not trying to give you a sermon here, but I'm trying to give you a different perspective. When man sinned, he lost the image of God because God gives each life as a time of grace during which he wishes to restore that image. Each human life, every human life, is that special. Unique, yes. It's a prized creation of God's in Hebrews. Each of our lives, regardless of its quality, is such a human life. To end that life is a personal affront to the Creator. To take life without the express command of God is a violation of the fifth commandment. So sadly, there is still a point which even many so-called conservative doctors, lawyers, people that deal in ethics find themselves in conflict with God's word. They may acknowledge it's wrong to take a person's life actively or passively by withdrawing food and water. I'm talking medical conditions now. Some would contend that it's acceptable when a person exercises his right to choose. Okay, that's also called personal autonomy. But the freedom of choice is subject to the will of God, always. So, if you're looking for divine guidance, unless you just want to get in a vicious circle of dialogue about abortion, the Bible teaches that every human life is a gift from God, an absolute value from conception until its natural, keyword, natural end. From Scripture, we also know that a person has the right to choose treatment for himself in line with God's will. But we won't use our Christian freedom to end God's gift of life because we happen to judge the quality to be poor. Christians don't fear death. They know what's ahead. We can face the burdens of life, trusting that even harsh things are for the good. That's in Romans. It seems pretty clear God's taking back his gift of life. And if that's the case, we don't fight it. If it seems clear that God in his wisdom is asking for one of his children to continue life with fewer earthly qualities, won't challenge that either. His will with the sin of taking human life and facing the difficult decisions of life and death, you can be assured that with Christ as your God and faith in your heart, you can be better equipped to handle that. Now, how do we take that? Even if you're not a Christian, you look at the basic principles, they work for everybody. How do you bring that back to society? How do you do that? That's my question. It's not about guns or the mayor pro tem in Dallas, which he has no clue what he's talking about, or if he does, it's even worse. How do you return those type of principles back to human life, whether it's an abortion or trying to get rid of your own life, or some kid shooting up 17 of his classmates. How do you return that message back to society? All right, 4:48 the time. I'm Rick Roberts. This is the Court of Public Opinion with you every day, Monday through Friday from 2 to 5. Let me try to get your calls in here. Philip in Wichita Falls. Philip, thank you for waiting. How you doing?
Good afternoon, Rick. Being this a Court of Public Opinion, I need to bring evidence to the table. I was enlightened over the last couple of days through a website called Citizens Commission on Human Rights. They're a watchdog group investigating and exposing psychiatric and human rights violations. I did not realize some of the information they have on and the appalling effect it has. They have one video that's been appeared on YouTube. It's what got my interest in it. Prescription for Violence. They report on this video that out of the 13 school shootings, 9 of them, the shooters were on psychotropic drugs at the time of shooting. The other ones, the files are closed. Can't see it. It's an epidemic proportion to the point where the manual that they use is called Diagnostic and Statistics Manual, is now trying to promote that a newborn baby can be diagnosed as manic depressive or ADHD as a baby, as an infant. And even some are trying to proponents in the womb. It's ridiculously overreach of psychiatric industry. I just did not realize what I saw and how bad it was. We got kids killing themselves, let alone each other, themselves.
Yeah.
Far more greater than what has been happening. It's just a tragedy of irresponsibility of issuing them drugs for. I mean, you and me here, seemingly being normal, we'd probably be diagnosed with 400 or 500 of these symptoms in this book.
Yeah, and that is a symptom, a peripheral, if you will, to a society that's lost its way. I mean, no parenting or very little parenting. We can take care of it with a pill. Get them an iPad. They'll entertain themselves for hours. We cause our own problems in this country.
Well, I wouldn't disagree with that to a certain extent, but you have some of these people that are testimonies on your parents saying, I trusted the system. My daughter went through a questionnaire at school, and the counselor says, your daughter looks like they may be depressed. You need to get some assistance. And then boom, they send them to the psychiatrist. Average diagnosis, 2 to 15 minutes, they're on drugs.
Yep.
There's no scientific background on it. It's really just, the website is cchr.org. I would encourage anybody listening, just go look at it, educate yourself. It just blew me away. They got some fascinating information, very good video information, and it's just amazing. I have a sister that's been on psychotropic drugs as a manic depressive, and I've seen it firsthand. But my goodness, I did not know how rampant it was. And I can remember a book my mother gave me back that was written in the 60s called None Dare Call It Treason.
Yeah.
If I seem to remember correctly, that one of the manifestos where communism is going to overtake America was getting in the welfare system, getting God out of schools, getting a heavily welfare-dependent state, and then one of them was psychiatric. And getting into the universities.
I hope you guys listen to what Philip said and go to that site, because he's absolutely correct. All right, David, we're just about out of time. You said a bunch of people were calling about the podcast. Was that it?
Yes, sir. Can you explain to them how to get to the podcast?
Yeah. You every hour of every show I've done for probably 2 years is available. You can listen to it when you want. You go to WBAP.com, WBAP.com, click on that. That's the homepage. You'll see shows. Put your cursor over shows. That's a drop down. It'll say all the shows. Just click on Rick Roberts, and that takes you right to the podcast page. So every show, every hour of every show is there. And if you scroll on down to the bottom, we have the standalones. The Moderate Muslim by Bridget Gabriel, the history of Democrats, Republicans, and racism, the black activist in Chicago saying there's a new move not to vote for Democrats anymore. Anyway, that's all down at the bottom. Every hour of every show is dated that way. You don't have to listen to any more of me than you want to. And there's some audio on demand. I'm not sure how that works.
Yes, sir. What I do is I pick out the best segments of the day. Usually it's 2 to 3. And from there, I put it on the on-demand section right there where that drop-down scroll is. Mm-hmm. And that's where they can find the most compelling segments of each day.
So there's audio on demand if you want to, on a hit-and-run type with the show, or go to the podcast page for the whole thing. All right? Did I explain that? Is everybody sufficiently confused now?
I'm clear.
You're clear. All right. Well, listen, that's, believe it or not, going to do it for me on this President's Day. And yeah, go to the podcast page if you like and listen to the show over again. Thank you for indulging me. I, just felt like I needed to give you my opinion on a few things. And that's what talk radio is. I'm not a newsman. I try to use the news of the day, but, God's blessings on each and every one of you, whether we agree or not. That's always my priority. I'll be back with you tomorrow at 2, your afternoon drive, Monday through Friday, 2 to 5 on News Talk, 820 WBAP.
Well, I grew up in one of them old farm towns where they hit it hard till the sun goes down. Nobody really seemed to care that we were living in the middle of nowhere. We just figured that's how it was, and everybody else was just like us, soaking in the rain, baking in the sun. Don't quit till the job gets done. That's the only way I know. Don't stop till everything's gone. Straight ahead, never turn around. Don't back up, don't back down. A full throttle, wide open. You get tired and you don't show it. Dig a little deeper when you think you can't do it.